Hi. So this is the November 20th Sunday meeting of the Timex Sinclair online user group. And Adam, our co-host, pointed out a week or so ago that we've been doing this for a year now, which is kind of crazy, but it's really awesome. And we have a bunch of regulars, and we have some new folks who show up every once in a while. I see Mark. Mark, I recognize you from Facebook. I'm glad you made it. And we've got Jim, who joined us 2 sessions ago, maybe the last one. I can't remember exactly.
No, just last month. Yeah.
Last month. Yeah. Okay. And we meet on the first Monday of the month at 9 p.m. Eastern, and the third Sunday of the month at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can find our calendar at timexsinclair.com, and you can also find a link to the groups.io email list there as well, where there has been a lot of activity over the past couple weeks. And with that, I want to turn it over to you guys, because you guys have been doing a bunch of stuff. So whoever wants to jump in. Or I'll call on somebody.
David has his hand up.
Oh, who does? Oh, David Solling? Oh, David.
Yeah.
Fire away, David.
Just talking about newcomers, I'm rather hoping that Iris and Holder will join us today.
I'm sorry, what, David?
I am hoping that Iris and Holder will join us today.
Oh, very cool. That would be awesome. So David, remind folks who Iris is.
Iris was a friend of mine, well, still is a friend of mine, but when I was living in Ottawa, she had a ZX81. Believe it or not, she developed her own programs for managing her cafe, which was called Cafe Wim. And she did everything from bankrolling on the 2068, although she used Larry Kenny's disk drive system in order to save things. Otherwise, it would have been impossibly slow. But she used that for at least 5 years.
That's crazy. That's awesome. Yeah, I hope so.
Because I'm using a new setup and I'm not quite sure.
Your microphone seems a little bit low to me.
Okay.
A little quiet.
Right. I keep turning you up, and then David talks and I about blast my ears out. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's not you, David. I mean, no blame here, just technology.
Where's your microphone, David?
Is that any better?
No.
Oh, I can hear you clearly. Just a minute.
Okay. All right. David will come back to you as you work out your microphone issues.
Yes, carry on.
Hey, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about your transferring those discs, reading those discs and that experience?
Sure. I mean, it was really pretty easy using the Greaseweazle to get the raw images. I had used the Greaseweazle, I don't know, I bought it 6-8 months ago, something like that. And I used it one time to work on some old Mac discs to recover them.
Joe, I know some of the people here know what the Greaseweazle is, but for those who don't know.
Yeah, so basically it is just a USB device that you plug into a Windows or a Mac that gives you direct access to the floppy drive hardware on the flux level. In other words, it doesn't read data and interpret it. It just says, yes, there's a bit, no, there's not a bit, right? So it's very low level. So you can take a disk that is damaged, and most operating systems would just refuse to read it and just tell you that it's broken, and pop that in there, and then pull in whatever data you can recover, and then you can use editing tools, hex editor or something like that to fix whatever's broken, and then have an image that you can then rewrite out to a diskette that you can use in an old computer. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, somebody's feeding back. Turn.
Okay,
So what's the name of this tool again?
it's called
Please.
Greaseweazle, and it comes in a variety of
Greaseweazle.
different different styles, and it's basically just a small microcontroller type. Yeah, there's one. Dave's got one up. Oh, lost you.
Hang on.
And then for the images, I actually had to go and dig up an old main board, an old P4 main board that I had recapped a little while ago, and load up some Windows XP, and then I could use that. What was the name of the program? CPC XP or something like that?
Yeah, CPC
yeah.
Disk XP, I think.
Yeah. And I used that to pull the images, although it didn't really understand some of the ways the discs were formatted, because it looked like those discs were formatted on different styles or different number of sectors and that sort of thing. So
I think it might have gotten upset by some of the CPM discs, or
yeah,
the
I
really
think it might
large
have-
ones.
yeah, the CPM disc
Is that why some of them appear to be empty when you look at the disk file? Like the
No, some
DSK
of them
file?
were just empty. I
Oh.
just went ahead and pulled everything just because. But even on the raw image pull, it was just a bunch of the same character over and over and over again, like it had never even been formatted on one side.
Okay.
So that's why they appear empty, because they were empty. But yeah.
Do you think this would work on a Larkin formatted disk?
Yeah,
I
are
know
they
the
5 1/4?
Greaseweazle. Yeah, a Greaseweazle will pull data off of anything.
Yeah.
It'll work with a 8-inch disk drive. It'll work with any 5 1/4 that you can think of. I don't know that it'll handle hard sectored floppies, but anything soft sectored it should pull data off of.
Well, then you have the trouble. Well, I guess it's not trouble. Then you have the raw data, but then you have to have some utilities, right, written to actually be able to read and give you out a disk image.
Right. Yeah. So you can take that image and there's a variety of different utilities out there. But what I was doing was taking the images from like Amstrad discs, which were other 3-inch discs. I was using it for that as well, to make a raw image that I could then use with a GoTech, and GoTech, the floppy drive or disk emulator. And there's an open source flash floppy program which you can put on the GoTech so that it reads just about every kind of disk image that you can think of. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And it's my understanding that most of the apps for assembling that raw data are Windows-based apps. Is that right?
No, I'd say there's a good 50-50 split between Windows-based and Unix-based apps.
Okay.
It's actually a little bit easier to deal with Unix because you can get right into the operating system, and the operating system kind of understands the disk formats a little bit better, I think.
Okay. This reminds me of the old 2 disk application for DOS.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. I actually have an XT that I keep running that has that on there just for that program, just so I can burn CPM disks.
Yeah, exactly. And if I recall correctly, that's what 2 disk specialized in, was reading and writing CPM disks.
Yeah. Moving files from one, type of CPM format to another, because there was every format you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and CPM never standardized on one format.
Right. Right.
And the other thing too is, with the Greaseweazle, I never heard of that when I got my Chiroflux, but it's been around about, I guess, the same length of time, but I know for me, I have the Flux, which is basically the same idea, right? Reading the magnetic flux data. That's why they call it Flux off of floppy disk. So I mean, there's two options there, I guess, for folks that are maybe looking to get that. But you do need to get a specific, a custom board that works with the software and hooks up to the drives to be able to read that data.
I think I read somewhere that it was possible to use the Flux software with Greaseweazle or the Greaseweazle images.
It could be, because I'm thinking the data is probably more or less right, so the same, because it's just reading the flux, the magnetic flux on the
Yeah.
on the floppies.
Yeah, raw data is raw data, so it doesn't
Right.
really care. Yeah.
Right. Right. Cool. Jeff.
Well, Joe, I do
sorry.
want to say thank you for doing that. I did get a chance to look at some of those discs this week, using the Fuse emulator that has the Zebra FDD 3000. I guess it's a prototype version of the being able to read the disc, because that's the only one that works, and it's not like the current version, right? Is that right, David?
Oh no, so one of the Joaos, Johnny Red, pointed that out to us, and it's somebody, and the name escapes me, but somebody wrote a sort of an extension to Fuse, one of the emulators available for the Spectrum, which also emulates the 2068. So they wrote an extension to that so that it would act as a Timex Portugal FDD 3000 disk drive. And you can, through the menu structure, you can go in and load up to 4 physical disks, theoretically, for physical, or disk images rather. And, do all of the things that the physical FDD 3000 can do, at least when it's working from a Spectrum mode. And this is one of the shortcomings that you discovered or encountered while trying to use it, is that it only works in Spectrum mode. It doesn't do the 2068. Joao talked to the person who wrote the code and said, can you make it work the 2068? And that sort of fizzled out. So when you do load a program that is specific to the 2068, if it uses one of the 4 or 5, I think it's 4 special 2068 commands, stick, sound, free, and there's a 4th one that's escaping me right now.
On error.
Thank you. On error. Yes, the good one. It'll barf. It'll say nonsense and basic, because those are not in the Spectrum. And so what you have to do is extract the thing, save it as a TAP file, and then switch Fuse over to 2068 mode and load it. But what you can also do is take one of those disk images that is full of files, and use this Tomato program, which is available at the same place that the FDD 3000 enhanced version of Fuse is available, and convert a disk image into a TAP file that then contains all of those little programs, and which will work with the emulators, because the emulators are just fine with loading a TAP file that has lots of little programs on it. It's not as slow as real tape. So if you try to load something that's theoretically at the end of the tape, you don't have to wait all day for it to get there. But yeah, it's pretty.
Oh, you mean you can avoid like just having 2 open quotes and then putting the name of the program, and it just
Well,
gets
if you right, if you put just right. So if you put the name of the if you do 2 open quotes, it'll just load the first thing that it encounters and keep doing that. Right. But yeah, you can put the name of the program, and there's, with a TAP file, there's no physical beginning. It just skips right ahead. Whereas with the tape.
However, in some applications, you can actually scroll down and highlight the program that you want, rather than allowing it to go cycle through all the programs until it finds what you want.
Yes.
I think Fuse does that, and possibly,
Exosaurix.
yeah, possibly.
Okay. Okay. I haven't tried that, but that's cool.
And then too, some of the programs allow you to convert from a tab file to TZX file.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is a lot easier to handle.
Yeah. And there's some command line utilities for doing that as well. There might be, are there any, Windows GUI utilities for converting tap to TZX or anything else? Do you guys know?
No, none that I've seen recently, and a lot of them that I've seen were designed way back in the days of Windows 3.1, and they just don't work under Windows 11.
Well, I have one on my Windows, but it's for XP, and it doesn't work on my Windows 10.
Oh, okay.
So it'll convert like a raw like WAV file into a tape, or excuse me, TAP file or TZX file, and it works
Okay.
pretty good. And then you can also use it to go the opposite direction, which is how I normally use it, so I can load software onto my actual real hardware.
Yeah,
I forget what it's called though.
Sorry.
Go
That's
ahead.
why I hung on to an older laptop that floated with Windows XP exactly for that reason. So I can XP still supported DOS programs, and sometimes you actually have to go into DOS mode in order to use it, but at least the program worked.
So Joe, thank you so much. You saved me all kinds of hair pulling.
I was actually glad to help.
That was really fantastic. And that gets. I think it was Jeff that said on the list. Jeff and Adam both talked about on the list this week about how it's great to have a community. And I think doing the email list is cool. You get a certain amount of community with it, but being in person like Adam gets to do with Ryan and Carl with the Albuquerque Timex Sinclair user group.
Right.
So there's your segue, Adam. Tell us about the latest from the 3-member largest Timex user group in the United States, physical group.
Well, Ryan, you're on, right? Aren't you? I think I saw you earlier when I
saw Ryan.
Yeah. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and I talked about the last time, and why don't you talk about what we did on Thursday, this past Thursday? What was it, the 17th, I think, or something? Are you there?
Hey, Ryan. Let's
I
see if
think
Ryan's
you
there.
don't have your microphone on.
Oh, he's.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's see. That was a few days ago. Let me recall. Yeah, I guess we geeked out quite a bit on some of the old equipment here. I was showing Adam my reel-to-reel recorder or tape deck.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other stuff, and going over my Raspberry Pi emulation development setup here. I don't know, Adam, you probably remember better than I do.
Sure.
Let's see, what else did we do?
Ryan has finally set up his Timex Sinclair 2068.
Oh,
yes. He has his original amber screen monitor from the 1980s, which is about, what is it, like an 8-inch screen? Something small.
I think it's a 9-inch, somewhere
screen?
like that, yeah.
Yeah, and just like all Timex 2068s, its picture is, shall we say, not great on the monitor, but I guess you said you bought that specifically so you could program, because on a TV screen it was even worse, right? Is that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was hard to stare at the text.
Yeah.
For very long, so that's why I got that.
Yeah, and I guess we went through his tape collection, and let's see.
Oh yes,
he lent me this. This, we can get into that a little bit later, but he brings out, he's like, oh, maybe you'll want to see this. And then he brings out this big, well, I can't even stretch out my arms big enough, but a big box, and it's full of like 30 or 40 tapes at least, some of which are originals, some of which are hold programs he has on it. And the program, or the tape I was just showing, by the way, is he was part of a user group in the 1980s I'll let you talk about this, Ryan, obviously, or I won't let you. Why don't you talk about this, Ryan, and tell
Yeah,
us about
it's,
that group?
It was the Fort Worth Timex user group that Tim Ward was one of the founding members that we had on several meetings ago. And yeah, there was, I forget who it was that was maintaining the sort of the tape library, but as I kind of recall, as Adam was finding out on the tape, was I think what he would do is he would have a tape, have sort of a master tape that he would bring along with the recorder to the meetings, and then somebody would bring stuff, and I think we would load it up onto a machine there, and then he would record onto that tape. He would record him because it had a mic, and he would record him saying what it was, and then he'd save the program off to that tape and just add it to it, and then you could go and get dubs of those things. If you brought a cassette, he'd dub it off.
Right, the tape that was lent to me by Ryan is it's a 90-minute tape, so 45 minutes per side. And obviously the original was a 30-minute tape, or 60-minute tape, sorry. So like the last 15 minutes of each side is blank. And by the way, if anyone's interested, I did upload the raw recording to archive.org yesterday. Just this way, if anyone wants to play around with it, because I'm not sure when I'll have the time. But you can listen to it, and you can see how closely packed the data is on the tape. There's like really no room between each program, which I would have found extremely hard to use back in the 1980s. But Ryan used it, and he actually made notes on his index card that says which programs he was able to load successfully, which ones didn't.
I downloaded your WAV file and started splitting things out into
Oh, did you really?
individual pieces with Audacity.
Okay.
And the first one I tried, it barfed and said it couldn't load it, gave me all these errors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to use one of the command line utilities to convert from audio to tap.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah, I was trying to do that a little bit after we had met up. I was giving it a try, and although the program I was trying to convert was actually a ZX81 program, and realized that audio to tape wasn't actually going to do that because it's for Spectrum tapes. So I just took the WAV file, I just recorded it in Audacity and was trying to massage it to play into Zasarix because it has the ability to just read a WAV file. But I was having no luck with this and was looking for advice on, what's a good, I guess it'd be levels to look for in Audacity, like how to get them to a good level to even begin to process, or if anyone's had experience with reading the WAV files directly into Zasarix.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
Joe's got something.
Yeah, so I found one of these. It's called I don't know, Reshow. It's a cheap, I mean, it's really cheap, but it's cassette to USB. Okay, so it goes directly into USB, and I have had some fantastic luck with my old ZX81 tapes in recording them to a PC as a WAV file or as just raw audio, using this because it digitizes it internal to this. So it has a lot of automatic gain control and that sort of stuff. Like I said, it's relatively inexpensive. I think I bought this at a place where you can pick up stuff that's been sent back to Amazon. And I think I spent a whole $2 on this. So, but I'm sure they're more. But it's a Reshow cassette player and USB capture device. Anyway, so then I can take that and I can load the file into Audacity and then further process it to speed it up or slow it down, depending on how bad the tape was. And I recorded some ZX81s and actually recovered files that I had written when I was in high school. So
Joe, that brings up a point. I'm glad you said that about speeding up and slowing down a file, because I think the file that I dumped the other day, that Timex Sinclair 2068 library, it might be playing at slightly the wrong speed. Maybe it's my tape recorder or something. Is there a standard way that you can know or adjust how fast it's supposed to be in the recording? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And what I ended up doing is really just counting bits and then seeing how long, like 32 bits were, or 64 bits, just going through and counting, that's a 1, that's a 0, that's a 1,
Whoa.
1, 1, 0.
You mean
1,
by
1.
zooming in on the audio file?
Yeah, zoom
Yeah.
in on the audio
Oh my
file and you'll
goodness.
see
Okay.
for the ZX81s, I think it's 4 bits is a 0, or 4 pulses is a
Mhm.
0, and 9 pulses is a 1. So you can spot those little segments and then
Sure.
count the number of bits and then see how long that takes, and then see if that is the
Inspect.
correct amount of time. And if it's not, then you can speed it up by a percentage that you're off.
Ah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a for both the ZX81 and the Spectrum 2068, whatever, there are those spaces, those pulses occur at a certain frequency. So you can do what Joe did, which is zoom in and then just measure to see if if those things are happening at the right spacing.
Wow, that's hardcore. I
Oh,
dig
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent like I must have spent 20 hours, just not all at one time, of course, but just over a period of time, just going through and like there were spots that should have been a 1, but the pulses did not come up enough to register as a 1. So I would go in there and actually take a 1 that was good and copy it and paste it over the top of that bad 1
Oh
or
my.
bad 0, and basically rebuild each bit until I had my program back.
Wow.
So there's like little sections of the tape, like you'd have really good recording, then all of a sudden it would just drop out.
Yeah.
It would be very quiet. But I could replace those chunks with the correct 1s and 0s and then bring it back to life.
That's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. A lot of the problems too with tapes, especially the ones that were recorded during the period, was the tape recorders themselves that had no governor. So the volume, the speed would fluctuate, and the volume of the recording would fluctuate. So sometimes what I've done that seems to have worked is I don't think I was using Audacity, but I was using a similar program, and I just filtered out all the frequencies that weren't transmitting information, and then I applied normalization.
Mhm.
And then adjusted the volume just a bit, and I found that retrieved a lot of tapes that otherwise would have ended up in the trash bin. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, But yeah, I've noticed too when I've recorded programs directly from the 2068 or the TS1000 that the computer itself emits a pretty good steady signal. I mean, you look at the file after you've captured it with Audacity or Wave 1 or something like that, and it's perfectly aligned, and they load beautifully. But you look at the tape program, you try and record it on one of the period tapes. It's like, oh my God, So anyway, that's a trick that I've used. Hopefully it's useful to somebody.
Yeah.
Well,
And
go ahead, David.
sorry, and Tim posted a link to a really amazing document that I've seen a couple times, but about all things ZX80, 81. And then he gave us the direct link to the cassette file image information for people who want to be like Joe and individually edit bits.
I don't want to ever be like Joe. No, no.
I wouldn't recommend it, but you know, I don't know. It's something I can do when my wife is watching a movie or something like that that I'm not really paying attention to. I can do that on my tablet and just scroll through the.
Joe, your wife might see this, you know.
It's going to work.
No, I can guarantee you my wife is not going to watch this later on YouTube.
Hey, Joe. So when you're extracting data from those cassette tapes onto Audacity, I mean, a lot of those tapes are really old. Do you have to do a lot of noise reduction?
Definitely, yes. But that's why I said I recommended this cheap little cassette tape. And I mean, it is the cheapest Chinese construction you can imagine. The plastic is very cheap. The tape deck is very cheap, but it works. It just works. And you're getting a digital output of this. I'm not running it through a sound card where I can introduce more noise. Everything is contained within this one little device. So that I had attempted to recover some of my old tapes from college years ago using a sound card. And I think it was a noise blaster of some kind, but I ended up getting so much more noise from the sound card that I didn't really have much success. But yeah, this is just a little tiny cassette tape. And it is very, I don't know, flimsy feeling, but it works.
Very cool.
Oh, it has the tape player inside of it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't realize
it's
that.
a cassette deck. It's a cassette deck, but it has
Okay,
USB
that's the
output.
key piece.
Yeah,
I
so
I
it's,
thought you
that
connected
it
to a
was just
cassette player to it, and then it
No,
was
no,
just
no.
like,
no,
oh.
see, it goes direct out USB. If you can see that, it doesn't
Oh,
want to
yeah, I
focus.
can, yeah.
Little tiny
Yeah.
USB connector.
Yep. So that you can dump right in. It just looks like a USB device, and you can record right into Audacity. So it eliminates several steps that can cause it could introduce noise or additional problems. And yeah, like I said, it has some pretty good automatic gain control, which is very helpful in this sort of thing.
Very cool.
You could pass that information on to Dave, and maybe he could post it somewhere.
Yeah,
on the
actually, I pulled up the Amazon page for that.
Yeah.
I just
What
wanna
is
say-
it for real? What's the real cost on this thing? I've never looked.
Oh, 28 to 35 bucks.
Okay, yeah, there. So
Since we're on the subject of tapes, you remember Jim March mentioned that he had some stuff, and Stuart went down. It happened to be going to North Carolina a few weeks ago and brought a bunch of stuff back and sent me a big pile of things. And this is the box of box of tapes. That's a giant, it's a shoe, literally it's a shoebox. And it is packed to the
Obi-Wan
top.
Kenobi.
What's that?
I was thinking that too.
It's a shoebox packed to the top with the vast majority are tapes for the 1000, but I think I saw a Tazword 2 tape in here or something like that. So there's a couple oddballs. And then there's the super game pack for the Atom. And I don't know if this is just, that Jim had the tape and maybe taped over it, if it's the real deal. Jim, do you have any recollection?
I hope you're not asking me if I remember.
Yeah, Jim, I'm asking you to remember something from 40 years ago. Come on. Literally 40.
Are you talking about the digipacks? Is that what you mean? Like the cassettes that run at 19.2 baud for the Atom, Coleco? Okay.
Yeah, I think those are probably originals. I wouldn't have gotten those and taped over them.
Yeah, no, you have plenty of
What software
things-
is on that one? Does it say?
things like on the Atom thing.
Yeah,
It says
just
super
curious.
game pack, Buck Rogers something.
Oh,
or
that's the one that came with the Atom.
came
Okay.
with the Atom. Okay. And
Also, David, are there erase tabs torn out of that cassette? Because if they are, then it wasn't overwritten.
there is no molding even for erase tabs. This
Oh,
yeah, maybe the Atom drive doesn't, I don't know, respect that. But I wanted to ask Jim, there's a lot of stuff here that looks like It might have been things that vendors sent you in as you were working on your book.
Yeah, as soon as they found out I was writing a book, I got everything was sent to me for free. They wanted to get a review in the book. So, and I played with most of it. I don't think I loaded the programs, many of the programs, but the hardware I played with and
Yeah.
talked with it and reviewed it in the book. And of course, I was the envy of everybody at the user group meetings because I had
And
all
this one
this
too.
stuff. Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, there's got to be
So, yeah.
60 tapes in here, I think. So yeah, I mean, if it hadn't been for you writing the book and you holding on to all this stuff, there's a lot of stuff here that just would not, have a chance of being preserved. And now Joe's turned me on to the right unit, so I'm going to be getting one of those things, Joe.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Stuart and David. The only reason I found this group was because I found these boxes and I said, I'm getting to a point where my kids won't know what to do with this when I die. And so I needed to kind of shepherd it. And I was so happy. I was on the meeting on Sunday, right? This was a month ago, Sunday. On Monday, Stuart calls and says, well, how can we make arrangements to because I wanted to give it to get it into the right hands, and I decided that you were the right hand. So, and Stuart called me on Monday and I said, well, I don't feel comfortable packing all this stuff up. And he says, well, where do you live? I said, well, I'm down here in North Carolina. He goes, oh, I'm going to be in Asheville on Wednesday. Are you close to Asheville? So we had lunch. Was it Wednesday that we had lunch? Wednesday or Thursday of that week. And I said, here, I gave him all my boxes. I felt a tremendous burden of responsibility lifted from my shoulders, So thank you so much for
Yeah.
Well, it was great meeting you, and that really was like the icing on the cake, because I had never been in North Carolina. We were visiting my wife's friends for a week. So that was really
yeah, I figured it was the gods that be had decided this is all the stars lined up. So
yeah,
I wasn't going to argue.
Yeah, I remember the phone call. And I said, well, where do you live? Maybe there's somebody in the group, who
Right.
lives near you, who has a friend. And when you said in North Carolina near Asheville, I just that was unbelievable.
Right.
Anyway,
Anyway,
I wanted to add to the to David's reporting of what was among the stuff that you had. I divided the lot more or less into things that were kind of unique that might need looking at by David and archiving, and stuff that was pretty well known by everybody, but a collector would be happy to have. Maybe not even somebody who uses it, but who likes to have one of everything. So part of what I did not send, I sent David like the disk drive and the modem and the manual for fourth and all those tapes, and he got all the hard work. And but you had been sent by Memotech 5 different modules. I don't know if there's anybody in the country who has 5 different Memotech modules, but you had the MemoCalc, the Memotext, the Z80 assembler, a 64K memory module. So I figured like that some collectors really would want this, So I even share the screen. So, since I have a lot of stuff on eBay and a good reputation, people would trust that, okay, if I say it's, it was working in when last used in 1980, in the 1980s, they'd believe it and it would sell. So I put that up and it sold in less than 48 hours for $500, the set of 5, to somebody who, when I went into my QuickBooks, had purchased this was about their 5th purchase in the last 2 years. So they're clearly collecting, trying to put together as comprehensive a collection as they want. So I did spend 2 hours printing out the 2 manuals that missing, finding the little piece of Velcro that, and taking it from some other, other Melotech stuff I have, and I put it together, but it sold within, like 48 hours. And I figure I'm gonna treat that money to subsidize my new addiction to designing Timex related printed circuit board projects and sending off to China to get these things. So I just got 2 this week. Not this week, but I'm still working on the ones I got a couple of weeks ago for my one of the projects. The other thing that I put up is, of course, you gave me, I think in total 9 copies of your encyclopedia book, and I put those up, and 2 of them sold so far. So people are, reading your book.
Yeah, those, by the way, are the only signed copies that I'm aware of, at least.
Yeah. And what else? Oh, and one of the, I don't think he's at the meeting here, but Ingo in Upper New York State,
Mhm.
Ingo Schmid, who I know as a customer and bought a kit a long time for me, he happened to mention during one of these Zooms not that long ago, showing us his ZX81 projects, that if a Timex 2068 comes up for sale at a reasonable price on eBay, he was interested. So I called him about that, and it turned out he had already gotten one, but he wants one for his brother. His brother's
For his brother, huh? Sure.
Evidently his brother's like a techie guy. As a matter of fact, when we talked about other things I had, including I have empty ZX81 shells, his brother evidently has a CNC machine and also likes to make molds. And
Oh my God.
was intrigued by seeing some other vintage hobby computers have clear plastic cases. And I have to say, I then looked, and it does look really cool to see some of those old hobby computers in clear plastic cases. So besides getting, well, actually, I happen to be going, you think the guards are sending me to the right places, because for Thanksgiving this week, I will be about a half hour away from Ingo. I'm visiting for Thanksgiving. I'll be near Troy, New York, where there's a makerspace that Ingo has been a member of. So I'm going to ferry the 2068 up personally this Thanksgiving and hand it over to him. He's going to check it out before he gives it to his brother. But anyway, and I want to see his various projects that he's discussed at other meetings there. So that 2068 is also going to have a good home. Other than that, mostly there were 1 or 2, there was at least one 2040 printer, but that's most of like what I kept. And since I'm working on printer interface projects with Tim in New Zealand, it wouldn't hurt to have an extra printer in case I make a mistake or something, blow it out. So anyway, that's where I was, but it was great meeting you. And, among the things I learned about your background is you did a lot of work in artificial intelligence to detect bank fraud, and had a company that you ran and sold for, detecting bank fraud, which is certainly an important thing that goes on. But I was thinking in the category of artificial intelligence, with such a well-defined definition of what the signal is supposed to be for a Timex computer, where the ones or whatever 4 bits and the zeros are 9 bits, and what the timing is, that some techie guy should be able to come up with something pretty smart to look at those tape files and figure out what the 1 and zeros are. You would think, someone who understands digital signal processing, I'm sure, like, when you know, I'm sure like when the CIA gets a poor recording of somebody's phone call, they put it back together, or they use some listening device to get, you know, a small signal and put it back together. I'm sure there are knowledgeable people who should be able to run the files that we have and say, you know, and do its best guess. This is a 1 and this is a 0, and put these things together, you know. But obviously, it's it's not a field that, you know, 1 out of 100 people knows. It's a field that maybe 1 out of, you know, 100,000 people knows. But if we got to the right forum, I think maybe somebody would be interested in that.
We'll rope someone else in.
I was going to mention something about that too, because I know instead of correcting it at the audio level, right, at the audio file level, you know, once you import that and convert it to a digital format, then it would be much easier, right? You could probably import that somehow, maybe into Excel or, you know, some other place where you could process it, and you know, zeros are like Stuart said, 4 bits, or, you know, whoever was mentioning
well,
that.
actually, Carl, I think it's actually the reverse. What I'm talking about is somebody using the intelligence at the analog level, so no one has to like look at the bits and put a missing bit back manually. You know, something, you know, I think you lose a lot when you go from the analog to the digital. And the unique know-how I'd be looking for is somebody who can actually look at that waveform before it's converted to, and do the conversion to digital, knowing that, okay, this should be either nothing but groups of 4 or 9. So what's this closest to? Is it a 4?
Right.
Is it a 9?
Okay.
Yeah.
That is interesting to do it in the analog domain, but I think that would just be a lot more harder, obviously, but because you'd have to have some kind of, AI. Yeah, you'd have to have some AI looking at that audio signal and then making the determination that, well, you know, these should be 4 highs, or 9 highs, and there's only like 6 there, so, well, it's more than 4, so that's obviously got to be one of the 9 ones, so it'll fix that. But I also think it would probably be, I think it would be easier once you got it converted to a digital format. It'd be easier to see those kind of things too, because you would see, like I said, if it was 6 highs in a 9-bit window, that that's wrong. I mean, that would stick out like a sore thumb in a digital, like an Excel spreadsheet. You can go in there and say, hey, go ahead.
I think there's a couple of digital parts we're talking about. One where we've digitized the analog audio, and then there's I've got these, a digital waveform that I'm looking at, and then there's the transition from the digital waveform to the bits of a tap file, for example.
Yeah.
So it sounds like if you are digitizing the waveform and you've gone through and analyzed it to say, here's where all the little signals are, and if I just had a file that just had like, okay, there's a sequence of this many pulses and non-pulses, then I could go through that file looking for patterns,
right,
and fix it potentially.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
Once you're in the digital
file,
domain, right? Once you're in the digital domain, analog would be a lot harder because, like I said,
but I'm between the digital of, I've already said it's a 1 or a 0. I'm in the intermediate digital of, I'm looking at the pulses in a digital waveform.
Yeah, you want to ride the waveform in the digitized analog domain before it goes pure digital.
Yes. And then I can look, if I've reduced it to, hey, this is a pulse I'm interested in or not, and then I could might be easy to write something to look for the patterns that basically just do a lot of substitutions of, if I see this pattern, we substitute with this pattern.
A number of years ago, I used to do a lot of video conversions to digital, and something in that domain that everybody has to have is you have to have a time domain, a TBC, a time-based corrector.
Yep.
Right, and that basically, well, for one, it'll strip out macrovision, right? Because if you're doing VHS stuff, most of that commercial stuff has macrovision on it. but that kind of is like what Stuart's saying. That's totally in the analog domain, right? So it just basically rebuilds the signal based on the fact that it knows exactly, you know, this NTSC standard and, you know, what's supposed to be there, like Macrovision's kind of stuff that's not supposed to be there, right? I mean, it is there, but it strips that out and rebuilds it on an analog format level, right? So, you know, maybe there's, you know, I don't think there's anything like that in the tape domain, but, and these devices weren't particularly complicated that I remember. You know, I mean, there were small little boxes, but, you know, they didn't have a big old processor in there. I think they just really knew what the NTSC signal was. And when it came in, you know, it just rebuilt it because it had a little, like, I think it's a memory in there that it would like store it in there and create a new analog signal based on what it got. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's probably, you know, different ways to skin that cat either way in the analog domain or the, you know, the interim state or actually in the final state, right? But yeah, it is certainly interesting to think about from an archival standpoint, right? Because there are, yeah, tape's just a notoriously crappy format for digital signals anyway, even let alone analog ones. But well,
Yeah.
music and audio. But
Hey, I want to jump back to Jim's collection just for a second here. I think it was last summer that Adam came across Jim's book and he ordered it through Interlibrary Loan. And Adam, you know, sent out a message on the listserv about how excited he was about this, and, you know, was going to try to preserve it. And then he got it, and of course, you know, it had been library rebound.
Yeah, so it had like no inner, and I couldn't scan it basically.
And there was no way, right, short of having a you know, sort of one of those V-shaped operations that the folks at archive.org have. And so we got all excited for a minute, and then we got sad. And but anyway, Jim, you know, like I said, Jim had a couple. I'm going to share my screen. Jim had a couple copies, and I scanned it, and it was one of the very first things that I scanned from Jim's collection. So we now have, and also one of the things that I love about archive.org is that not only does it get scanned, but it gets OCR'd. And Jim, what I'm going to do is take all of your hard work and go and fill out the entries on my website where I was too lazy to fill in, type in text from reviews and stuff. So, and this is a
David,
crazy
I
little
want to
book.
say that is a lot of work you're putting on your plate there. Like,
well, no, but it's been OCR'd, right? So now I can go to this thing called the Abacus controller for the TS1000, which I vaguely recall, you know, putting into the website, and I can copy this bit of text and, you know, say that Jim did the hard work.
So I guess my experience with OCR is it's good for searching, like for keyword highlighting.
Yeah.
But like the what you end up really getting with OCR through archive.org is pretty poor quality. I mean, even with high quality scans.
I've gotten really good results, especially from things like this, where the you know, the typeface is nice and clean.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's
yeah.
Great
This one
to
came
hear.
out really good. So and as Stuart mentioned, you know, I got the hardware because Jim had a floppy disk system for his ZX81, and my goal is to fire that thing up and record it and make a video showing, you know, the height of technology for, what was that, 1982 or 1983, that this company in New Jersey put out this thing, which is actually a they imported it from the UK. It's a company called Macronics made this disk interface, and this company called CompUSA or CompUSA, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. No connection to the old computer store, as far as I'm aware. But they imported this little circuit board, and, you know, you could buy it, and you could also buy a massive, heavy floppy disk with it. Heavy.
Yes.
Yeah, be careful about putting your finger in that one.
It's got a giant transformer in it. Oh my god. Yeah, so first thing I have to do is open it up and replace the capacitors, because I know if I turn it on, the magic smoke is going to come out explosively. But yeah, I'm gonna hook all that up and fire it up, and put a video up on the YouTubes of how to use a disk system for your ZX81 circa 1982ish. And Jim, you said you said you were the envy of all of your ZX81 friends for having that disk system.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they would drool as I would load programs quickly off of the I think it's a 5 1/4 inch floppy.
Yeah.
So
Is there?
yeah,
is
but
there-
it'd make funny sounds, it would whir, and it
Mhm.
was great. I'd set up my system and people would come over, oh my God, it'd be sprawled all over a whole table with these cables running around. And that circuit board just hangs out. It's not even enclosed. It just hangs out of off the end of the floppy. So it looks pretty impressive when you set it all up.
Oh, and there's no.
I was
Sorry,
going
go
to
ahead.
ask, is there any schematics or pictures of can we reverse engineer that board so that we may be able to make new ones?
Well, yes.
I mean, if there's a
believe-
schematic for it, and that's easy enough to do, but
I believe
I
there's
mean,
a
if somebody,
schematic.
go ahead.
But there's a schematic. There's 2K ROM. There's a 2K RAM on the board. It's really, really simple. It's all TTL parts. There's no disk controller on there, right?
Yeah,
There's
so
no-
basically, we need to get the schematic or a picture of the board, and of course you need to copy the ROMs, right?
Yep.
We need to get
That's exactly what I'm going to do, is pop out that ROM and read it.
Is it socketed?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
handy.
Yes. And then I mentioned my love of Forth once or twice, and Jim had the thing called Treeforth, which had several other names, but anyway, it was a unit that you took out your Spectrum ROM and stuck this thing into the socket, and you could put your Spectrum ROM in the sidecar socket, and a little tiny switch to switch between the two. But what was absolutely fantastic is that he also had the manual, which nobody else had. There was
Yeah, as far as that fourth ROM was, I ran that off of my ZX81.
Yeah.
You'd put in a removable, one of these, I don't know what they're called, but they got a little lever so you could pop out the EEPROM of the ZX81 and pop that one in.
Yeah.
Because I never.
Yeah, they call them ZIF, zero insertion force.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those.
ZIF. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was all for the ZX81. I never had a Spectrum.
And then there was some crazy stuff that a company in the UK made that somebody here in the US imported. The company in the UK was called William Stewart Systems, and one of the devices is a speech synthesis. It's in a box, but it's a speech synthesizer, and there's a little label over the chip, and so I don't know which speech synthesis chip it is. I think it might be the Votrax SC01. And they also made sort of the flip side, a thing that would recognize speech, very, very short bits of speech, and it came with one of those terrible little microphones that you used to get back with your cassette recorder back in the 70s. But for the purposes, that's a perfect microphone because of its bandwidth limitations and stuff. So, and I'll be making videos about those even if I don't get them to work, just because they're so crazy.
David, I was thinking about those microphones on Friday because I was wondering if that was how the voice was recorded for this tape for the TS 2068 library.
Very likely, yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
yeah, or through the the tiny condenser mic that's usually on the front
Maybe
of those
because
things.
it sounds like that. I mean, I don't know if you heard the MP3 recording I made of the voice at the beginning of the first track. It is distorted.
It's terrible. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess I should mention that I did test my tape recorder first by I loaded up some video art that David had typed in earlier this spring, I think, or last winter, something like that. And a rather longish program, loaded it into my 2068, and then saved it out to an actual. In fact, to this very cassette tape right here.
Oh my
I
gosh.
saved it out on this very tape recorder right here.
Oh my gosh.
And I saved it to tape, and then I loaded it back in without any trouble whatsoever. So I knew the tape recorder was working just fine.
How long did it take to save and play and load back in?
Oh, 2 weeks. No.
No.
No, I got like 30 seconds, I think, something like that.
Okay.
And then 30 seconds to load it back in. Yeah. But yeah, it works fine.
Does anybody know where I can find or have the schematics for a Winky board?
A Winky board. Yeah, that's. I wonder. There are schematics for similar things. I'll do some digging and I'll send it to you in the list.
Because
I remember
I
seeing.
think that would be useful to have. However, I am an absolute null when it comes to soldering things. I can burn my fingers 9 times out of 10, but if somebody can either find me one or build me one, I'm willing to pay a reasonable price for it.
So just to manage your expectations, I have one of those Winky Wars. I bought it back in the day, and my experience with it was it caused more problems than it solved.
Oh,
I could use it. I could use it to set the correct volume, but then if I actually tried to load or save anything with it connected, it would interfere with the load and save. So I would end up using it to get my volume set right, and then unplugging it and plugging the tape deck directly into my computer.
oh, okay. Now I know. Thank you.
Joe, did you know, I've looked at I feel like I've seen a schematic for the Winky board and I just don't recall it, but my kind of understanding of it and looking at the parts here, let me share. I've got, because Adam asked what a Winky board is, and so I'll just share.
Yeah, it was actually, the LEDs were actually being driven by the signal.
By the signal.
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, the way I'm looking at this, there's a couple resistors, there's a couple diodes, and there's a couple LEDs. And if you drive it hard enough with a signal, those diodes will square up that analog signal and make it more, more digital-ish. And in theory, that's what, would make it work better in terms of working with the ZX81, the 1000, which was a little sensitive to volume levels. People swore by those things. They thought, oh yeah, and they would, they talk about it in the newsletters about how,
Oh yeah, but my experience was I couldn't get the thing to work.
Yeah.
It just seemed to interfere, but it could have been my tape deck too, for all I know.
Right. You should get a reel-to-reel like Ryan.
I actually had one for quite a while, and the felt discs that drove that's part of the drive mechanism failed.
Oh,
and I never did find suitably sized felt discs that were of the right type. I tried 4 or 5 different felt discs on there, and they all just caused problems, and tape landed on the floor, and it was just a mess. So yeah, that thing's still sitting in a box waiting for one day when I sit down and try to figure out what kind of tape or what kind of felt discs I need to actually make that thing work again.
Yeah.
And the other thing too with decks now, is I think folks should try and get one of these computer oriented decks, right? I know Radio Shack sold their CTR, the cassette tape recorders for their Trash 80s. Timex obviously had the 2020, and it's very similar to the Radio Shack had a Mini Set 9, which is basically the same thing, it looks like. although I have both of them and they're not exactly the same and the schematics aren't exactly the same, but for all intents and purposes, you need a tone control, right? Because a lot of cheaper, cassette decks don't have any kind of tone control on them at all. And the tone control that's on the Miniset 9 and the 2020, you can actually adjust it while it's recording, right? And it will record the adjusted tone. So if you get the tone really, high pitched squeaky, that's kind of, what you need, right? Instead of it being kind of a dull sound, because then you're not really getting those nice peaks, right? For the signal, you're kind of.
Carl, maybe you and I can get together actually, because maybe you can give me some tips. Maybe I can get a better signal out of my cassette player to maybe re-record Ryan's tape. I mean, I have tone control on mine, and I messed around with it until I got it. Because at first I was getting a little signal, and then a too large of a signal, and everything was clipping. And I finally got most of the tape, but the tape isn't really exactly even all the way because I think it was recorded many different times. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So maybe even from different computers. So I could, which I'm not going to do this because there's 36 programs on one side, individually record each program, but I'm not going to do that. There's got to be a happy medium, which is what I think I found. I don't know, David, what do you think of it?
Well, exactly what you said is that these things were recorded, dubbed from tape to tape at different levels. And so you would get, variation across the cassette tape. And then they take that and duplicate it.
What do you do about that, really? I mean,
you could get the whole file into Audacity and you can normalize the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which will kind of, it'll dip down the highs and it'll bring up the lows.
Yeah.
But then again, you're manipulating the original signal, and I don't know how that will affect it, but yeah, that's difficult. That's the problem with cassette tapes is, the deck is one thing, and if you use that deck for everything, you're pretty much golden. But if everybody's got their own cassette decks, even just with the same manufacturer, you're going to have variances in there. The speed, how the azimuth of the head is, all kinds of things, right, that are going to affect it.
I want to ask Mark, because I recognize Mark from Facebook, and I've seen Mark's pictures of his collection. I think Mark might be a moderate collector of of our favorite computers. I see computers behind you, Mark. I see on the shelf some black. Those are probably what, the TC 2048s or 2068s?
Those are actually 2086.
2086. Oh wow, okay.
Those are the Polish ones.
Yeah, awesome. So talk to us, Mark. Tell us, catch everybody else up, because I've seen, I see you on the groups, but tell everybody else who you are. And
I'm Mark Kloosterman from the Netherlands, 54 years old already. And about 7 years ago, I found my old toast rack in the attic. And I also found a nice clone on eBay from Ukraine. And that started my collection, actually. So over the time, I started collecting more clones from Russia. Then I started to make my Sinclair collection complete. And after that was done, I found out that there are all kinds of different spectrums from all around the world, like in Brazil, Argentina, Chile. So I started collecting those as well. So it grew out of hand.
It's really cool. So have you actually used your Polish one? Have you fired it up? And
I did, but just a few times. It has to be working in working order. You can see it on my website that I run a test program on it, and that's about it, actually.
Cool. What's your website, Mark?
www.sinclaircollection.site.
Okay.
And there you can see them all. Like those
you
from,
do have 2 or 3 there, don't you?
those two. This is a very rare one. This has actual keys.
Yeah.
And that's when they started importing them into Poland, but they stopped it and referred to the normal ones.
So I mean, I can see the picture that you showed us, but the one with the keys, is that a cartridge slot on the side of it? What is that?
What?
The one that you pointed to with the keys that has a red something or other on it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it should
I
be
thought,
should be a cartridge slot. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
Oh,
this is-
nice.
It's basically like probably what a TC 2068 with real keys.
Yeah,
Yes.
look at
exactly.
well, I'll be right over. You're local, right?
that.
And yeah, there's some rare items like, well, you would recognize this one.
Carl, there you
And,
are.
Yeah.
yeah, I think
1510.
Stuart sold this today to someone. I offered him $25 for it, and he rejected.
Ah.
But it was just to say hi. Maybe he doesn't remember it. And also kind of nice is this little thing. I hope you can see it.
Is that a 1510? Or
Looks like a
1500 rather?
1500. Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yes, but look at the number.
Oh, I think you posted a picture. It's really low. It's like 143 or something.
It's 145. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It came from eBay, from a church, I think. They were selling it, and like the church doesn't know anything about those things. Just put it online, untested. And after I got it, I was shockingly amazed that it was such a low number. So
That's crazy.
yeah, you have to be
Oh,
lucky sometimes.
Looks like a nice collection. I'm kind of collector myself, so yeah, I know exactly.
Cool.
But
Thanks
these things are getting expensive now, though. They're not like cheap like they used to be.
Yeah, I know. I saw a 1510 a few years ago. It was going for $181. I thought, well, that's too expensive. But this year I bought one with 2 games and I paid, I think, about $800.
Oh,
Oh,
oh, that
It was
hurts.
the most expensive thing of my whole collection.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's the
wow,
most
yes, you are
expensive
definitely
thing.
correct. Wow.
Yeah, it's the most expensive thing of probably one of the cheapest products at Timex.
Yeah. And the second most expensive will be the Jupiter Ace, which will come in a week time or so.
Oh, neat. Very
Yeah.
neat. Very cool. Mark, I'm so glad you were able to join us because I keep needing to reach out to you and, suggest, and
Really?
here you are. Cool.
Oh, yeah, I
One
am.
of the wonderful things about this meetings is the people, how it's international, and we get people from all over the world, and that's awesome. It's just so great.
Well, and that, so again, going back to that, community comment you guys were making on the groups.io list today, Tim Horner started joining us maybe six months ago or so, Tim?
yeah.
Does that sound- and you just brought a huge wealth of knowledge and and collaboration, international collaboration. It just would not be possible without stuff like this. So Tim, what have you been up to?
Tied up with work, so I haven't pushed anything forward in the last few weeks. So yeah, well, maybe for next time, but at the moment, no, it's a bit quiet.
Yeah, that I wish Ricard, trying to remember what his name is. Was it Ricardo who posted on the list? I wish he had been able to join us because he had
About the Pico.
Yeah, about the Pico, which sent Jeff off in a completely different direction. Jeff, who's easily distracted. Hey Jeff, tell us about your distractions.
Squirrel. Well, since Ricardo is doing the software work, which everyone here knows that I absolutely love, I was looking at trying to come up with a new hardware device to deal with interfacing to the 2068. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But that's a prototype board for an FPGA board that the device itself can be had at DigiKey for like $12 to $15, depending on the particular device and its whether it's industrial, commercial, whatever. So and the CPLDs I was thinking about using were, 18 to $20 a pop, because they're like way old technology. And so I decided to take a right turn from doing the software for now and come up with a board that we can use, or that I can use, to interface to the 2068. I'm also planning to release that as an open hardware project, so that, because right now FPGA boards are almost impossible to get.
Yeah.
And this could be released for anyone to build. So actually working with this, it's a relatively new vendor. They've only been building FPGAs for 5 years.
Okay.
So the tools are a little bit clunky when you compare them to Xilinx or Altera, but they're certainly usable. And I've been able to get this board up and running after I fixed, as I said in my email, a whisker in the programming area, solder whisker. And so it's been able to, it's been working just fine. And I'm just going to do a little bit more work to make sure that the board and I are getting along well. So, and then after that, I'm going to modify one of the boards I've already gotten for interfacing. I've already designed for interfacing with the 2068, so that I can get that project pushed forward, and I hope generate something that would be of interest to the Sinclair community.
Yeah. So is that a part that, obviously it has to be because you're using it, a part that is 5-volt tolerant, drives 5-volt signals?
Unfortunately, no. Those are, it's almost impossible to get anything that's 5-volt tolerant. So like my other interfaces, I'm using level shifting buffers to deal with that. There are other ways of doing it, but I come out of a medical device background. So the thing that you want is reliability, reliability, and reliability, the first three things.
Right.
So,
well, and I think Ricardo mentioned that he was using, I believe, something like the 74 LVC 245 or whatever, which is a, it's a version of the 8-bit transceiver series that largely TI makes, that does like 1.6 volts to 3.3 volts on one side and up to 5 volts on the other side.
I think that's actually the device I'm using as well.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, here's hoping you can stay focused.
Good luck with that.
And I don't know if probably not everybody who's watching this knows this, but you've been doing this for a long time, because I remember going through, back in the days of the Yahoo group, that you had posted some very similar stuff, gosh, in the early 2000s.
Yeah. And then I got hyper busy at work with designing and launching products at work, and just had to let that sit for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that stuff is still, the Yahoo group got archived, and we, both Adam and I, uploaded stuff to archive.org, and your old PDFs are still sitting out there. I remember looking at those and thinking, how does this work? What's he doing? Very cool. Very cool. Hey, Larry. Larry, have you joined us before?
One time. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay. I probably earlier in the year I did. I didn't have a camera. I'm using my tablet for the first time on Zoom. So
cool.
And, yeah, I'm the one I left a note about the ZX Westby.
Oh, okay. You had built it, or you
Yeah,
were?
Yeah.
Could you repeat what you said? The ZX what?
Westby. Kevin Dorff mentioned back in September 25th meeting. And I contacted him trying to figure out, because I couldn't figure out how to get certain part of it working. I said, and he wasn't too much help either, but I figured out after searching through different, through the German version of the GitHub group, that where some of the information is translated in English. And I thought that was a pretty neat little project, because you could either use an ESP32 as a server, and it connects. You can to your another computer, whatever. You just type in the HTTP code there, like 192.168.0.8, and up pops the server. I thought that's pretty neat. You take P files. It only takes P files that I know of. It won't take WAV files because they're too big, or TZX files, and you just drag them over there, and you can upload it into the computer, there, and then they show up on the screen, which I don't know if you can see it or not behind me here. And you run the program from there. It's a really neat little project to me. And you could now this one's being run off I built a video version that has, you can have an LCD screen, or you can have both. Actually, you can have a VGA monitor hooked up to it through, and I like that, because my little ZX8 CCB, the Pokemon, quit working for some reason. I don't know why. I haven't troubleshooted it yet to figure out, but I like it better. Nice and clean. Although it did have some issues with noisy. I use separate power supplies. I don't use a SETI as a source of power for it. And I had an extremely noisy power supply, and I couldn't figure what heck was going wrong. Plus, you need to clip one resistor to put it in 50 hertz mode. It still displays just perfectly on a standard monitor. So
very cool. I posted the link in the chat, and so and I posted the link to the one that you built puts out the video. I know that there's another one that's just for tape.
It's a simple one. It's just like you need like 2 or 3 parts, and it's the exact same thing. It just only shows up on a screen of your computer. Hook it to a normal monitor. But you have to hook this thing up. The Pokemon module, you have to go add an extra the transistor circuit we used to use years ago when you want to connect to a monitor, a little transistor with a couple of resistors.
Yeah.
To get it to feed correctly, you have to add that, because the Pokemon doesn't seem to want to drive it right. So that's and that has some issues. Every time I redo something, it's always kind of run into issues, trying to make it a little bit better, not cleaner, clean it up. And that runs a problem that it would look like it was loading, but it would never get to that point. It turned out to be just a dirty phone jack. That's caused a problem. You can see because when you first load it up, it'll say Z underline IoT on the screen, and then it'll pop up. But you have to pay attention to when I do it, because it's so quick. And that's the only thing that would ever show up. I said, what did I do wrong now? Everybody who's built stuff knows that the fun of creating stuff. But I found a project, because I didn't build anything for this computer in years, since the early 80s, when I had my own EEPROM programmer. I found somebody. I even asked you about it online one time, but I could never find the original article. So, but
this is an EEPROM programmer that somebody had designed for the
ZX81. I used to program my chips for my Atari computers.
Do you think it was John Olliger's, or was it like from an article?
No, I never could find it. I looked in different all computer magazines. It must have been on one of the other, who knows who put it out, because it's obviously no longer in print, not available anywhere. But I don't have it anymore. I took it apart. To build this board, I took all the parts off of that because it was wire wrapped. So
and they make a EEPROM programmer you can attach to your computer now. your PC.
Oh yeah, I have the Mini Pro. Yeah, that's a
Same
whole lot
way,
easier,
yes.
more flexible.
Yeah, just a little bit easier to load.
Definitely, and so I was trying to read the code using it I couldn't figure out why this thing didn't want to work. That's when I finally figured out, hey, dummy, go your PC, type in the address, and then everything. I said, oh man, finally, because it's not clear. You have to dig around through the web pages and stuff, trying to figure out how to make this thing work. And I was missing something. Right in your face, but you can't see it. Sometimes.
Yeah. Well, since you've sorted it out, are you on the email list? I think you are, right?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm on the site, of course. I'm on the Facebook, but
okay. So I'll remind you of the link of where the email list is, but join the email list and write up your little adventure, and we'll find a place to post it so other folks can replicate your.
Yeah, what I've been trying to do is trying to take down all the things I've figured out, put it down so I don't forget myself.
Right.
Because we come back to it later. Says, how did I do that again?
Uh-huh.
Those little gray cells don't work so well. If it, plus you're doing too many different things all the time. So
yeah. Larry, I put the link to the group in the chat.
Okay.
So it says Timex Sinclair 2068 group, but we do talk about non-2068 topics on there.
Sure. Okay.
We talk about the 81 1000 and the QL and other stuff as it pops up.
I never got into after the ZX81, which I bought in 81 as a kit. It doesn't work anymore because I fried it, but I got a few more of them. So they had the newer ULA chip because that old one, problematic. So I went to the Atari version computers, and that's where I stayed. Started with a 400 and an 800 and then 1200 and then 130. I had a 130 upgraded greatly, but it went under in Hurricane Katrina, so I chunked it. I had boosted the memory. In fact, I used to do memory upgrades for people. I could swap out the memory chips and put sockets in like 35 seconds. 8 sockets using a heat gun. This is
of course, yeah.
Use a heat gun. While you heat one socket, the next one, so you just pull the chip out, put a chip in, have it sit a little bit at an angle, and bang, bang, bang. So
that would be what they would call 1980s hot air rework.
Yes, definitely. It worked great. I had bought the heat gun because of the job I worked. Been in electronics since I was a teenager. So, and I need to do some repair on it. Some kind of camcorder, one of the older style, and I needed a heat gun to get the chip out. And that's why I bought it, because I tried using a torch, low torch, for not for fixing something, just for taking chips and stuff off of boards. That was a real disaster.
That's overkill.
Yeah, that was. Do
you mean those like plumbing torches, like those ones that plumbers use?
Low torches with the the big kind of canister looking thing with a
top
up.
Like plumbers use.
Yeah. I haven't seen things in ages.
Yeah, I think it's too hot. Yeah, that's just too hot, too concentrated.
Well, the advantage is it'll melt solder on boards that are next door at your neighbor's house.
Yeah, that's true.
It was definitely over here. Plus, is trying to the boards terribly. But I saw it in an article in a magazine somewhere back in the days, and I said, no, that wasn't a good idea. So.
Yeah, but Larry, that's when soldering irons were huge.
yeah. So
that's hilarious.
Well, it sure makes salvaging parts off of boards a lot easier, right? You just heat the whole board up, bang it on the table, and everything just falls out.
I don't know about the whole board. It depends how, if it's a small board, you probably kind of get by with that. As long as those little pins are just straight throughs, the old style. But I used to salvage a bunch of chips, and I got tired of doing that because I never used most of them anyway. So
yeah,
same. They do the salvage with the solder pots, which is just a big pot of molten solder, and they just slide it over the top and then bang it, knock all the parts out. I've seen the people recovering crap loads of parts that way, and it's at the right temperature because it's the melting point of solder. So.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's crazy. That would have never occurred to me.
No, a lot of people, creative people out there, hey, when there was a need, you'll find a way,
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh my God, thank you,
Well, I
Larry.
wanted to point out we're about 25 minutes left, and wasn't sure if there's anyone here who has anything they wanted to bring up that we haven't gotten to. Is there anyone here who has something they wanted to say?
Thank you,
Or
Adam.
afraid to come forward? Come forward now.
I have a question. I have yet to get into really working with surface mount components. I'm looking forward to designing some new boards with that. And just yesterday, I was talking to Tim, and the subject of a good microscope for doing that kind of work came up. And I was curious if anybody's, got a model recently that they're happy with for, working through a binocular microscope on surface mount. Nope.
Yeah, I know there's an endoscope. I just bought, I bought it a few months ago. I haven't actually put it together, but it was highly recommended for doing that kind of thing. It's on the arm, and
Yeah.
you can you can put a camera in it. So it's it's actually a trinocular, so you can still see both eyes and the camera output at all.
I didn't even know what the trinocular meant. So you'll have camera through there.
It means you need 3 eyes.
You can buy another eye.
Oh, it's in 3D.
Because I guess, the trinocular, especially if you look at, Rossmann groups, Louis Rossmann, because he does a lot of Mac board repairs, and he's got these workstations set up with these microscopes, and that's what he uses. And you can actually see the output, in his videos when he's doing repairs on these, these Mac motherboards or whatever. And I think he just moved to Texas. He was up in New York, and he really hates New York's business practices up there. He's done with that.
He's left Texas.
He moved to Texas, I think, and he does workshops there if you're close to Texas, where you can go and actually bring in something that needs to get fixed, and you can use all the equipment that he has there, and they'll give you guidance and stuff like that to actually help you fix and repair your equipment using that But anyway, it wasn't that expensive. It's not cheap. I think it was like $500-600 from Amazon. And then you have to buy the camera separate, right? And all that kind of thing. So it adds on top of that. But that is a good camera to start with, I think, for that microscope to start with. You don't have to have the camera, obviously, if you're not really using it for that. And then there's the little small, I think they're AM scopes, or they have a big screen on the top, right? And a little workspace. And then they got the little gooseneck lights. And I have one of those as well that I kind of was using for like watch. I repair like watches and stuff, some old Casio watches. And those are good for, looking at tiny little, circuit boards in those little watches.
Yeah,
I don't need to.
I had a question for you. I've been using my binocular scope for the last 8 or 9 years or so, and it works really well. But would you recommend that, or possibly one of the camera type microscopes for someone just getting started?
Well, I kind of, I hate buying things 2 or 3 times. So I know, if you kind of plan on doing any kind of video recording, not even just for YouTube, but maybe for your own, edification, or you can look back later and say, this is what I was doing on this particular.
That's what I totally
project.
messed up. That's where I messed. Everything went wrong.
But I would recommend that. Yeah, I think that scope is probably, or is a good jumping off point where you don't have extra stuff, but that you may use later, but you don't end up buying another scope, right? That because I wanted that, and now I've got this scope that I bought that I can't do that with. So now what do I do with that? So I think that one kind of gives you room to grow, and it's a really great. I'll have to dig up the what I bought, but like I said, it was not a bad deal. It was like $600 for the scope and the stand, and it's a dual articulating arm stand, so you can move it wherever, and it's got a very good. You can buy different lenses for it, so you can really get into the macro stuff for doing like surface mount. I
Yeah.
mean, it really gets it's like a 20x zoom on there, and wow, it's nice to have the camera because then you don't have to look through the scope. You can put it on a big 20-inch, 30, 40-inch monitor, and holy crap, you can be just moving the head, and because you're going to be working on your stuff too, soldering or desoldering or whatever, probing, and so it's easier to see it on a huge monitor than having to stick your eyes through it.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see it, but I have my scope set up in my work area. And one of the problems I have is that the boom is really nice. But you have to be careful that you don't smack it into a wall or something.
Right. Yeah, that is kind of a problem. I know he had something that he came up with that it's a different kind of boom that goes on there. You'll have to, like I said, Louis Rossman's site, and he's got he's been around for about 10 years, and he's actually has some microscope videos, that he talks about those. But and like I said, that's the kind of work he's doing, is surface mount work, and that's what he uses. And all his techs use it and things like that, so that they can, and I know, of course, the EV blog, right? He's got some scopes there too that I think he's done some things on as well. But as far as Stuart's concerned, I don't think $600 is really that expensive unless you're looking for something for, a couple $100.
Yeah.
That would be a little different story. But then again, if you really get into it, now that $200 you spent is kind of wasted, right? Because now you got to buy a better microscope that's going to cost $600. So now you're $800 into the thing, right? So just get the $600 one to start with if you can, and grow into that, scope.
Yeah, and one thing I'd recommend, Stuart, stick with 025 or 050 pitch parts, and don't go any smaller than 0603. I've tried to hand mount 0402 passives, and it's possible, but it's a real hassle.
Good.
Yeah. And I know, Stuart, too, since you're making boards in China, all those guys, I know JLC, and I'm sure PCB Way, if you make a surface mount board, they can make you stencils, right? So that you can just get the paste, right? And just squeegee the paste on there, and then put your parts on, and then just stick that thing in a reflow oven. Or I've got a little bitty, and I think David's probably got one too. It's a little mini heat plate that they make. Miniware, I think, makes it. It's a little tiny heat plate.
It's very cute.
And you can put your board on there, and it'll reflow all the solder, right? The paste, which is so you don't have to hand solder anything.
That takes all the fun out of it, Carl.
Hand soldering is okay, but not a whole board like that.
Come on.
And
Either
that little mini unit,
get a hot air gun, and just get a hot air gun and just kind of move it around, and you'll see all the as the solder melts, you'd be like, oh, cool, and then just keep going around the board with it.
And chase the components as they get blown around.
Well, hopefully the paste keeps them there, but yeah.
That's funny. And that little mini, it's really good for burning your fingers too. If you just want to know.
Well, welcome to Surface Mount, Stuart. Where you been?
No, I'm coming out of a sleep from the 1980s. That's what I
yeah.
I'm rereading my my DTL cookbook and everything. I'm
my gosh.
I'm rebooting after 30 years.
It's funny you should mention that, because I just pulled the TTL cookbook out the other day, and it's like a 1970s hardcover you used to be able to get from TI.
Don Lancaster. Yeah, I bought it used online.
I miss the days of the old published data books, and then again, I'm glad I don't have to deal with published data books.
Yeah,
Well,
back in the days where you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's a good thing they were published, because otherwise all that information would be lost.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you actually, well, what chip do I need to do this? You had to go through the books, right, and figure that out instead of going onto the web and, I need to, and browse it that way.
Yeah, but I had 50 of those things sitting in my bookshelf, and it was just knowing what was in there was half the battle.
Yeah, National was good about giving those away too.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff K, I want to ask you about your cartridge cartridge journey.
Well, yeah, like I say, Jeff B did all that cool stuff, but before I forgot what I was doing, and there didn't seem to be a lot of excitement in the C#.NET thing because like portability or whatever. That's why I reverted back to DOS-based tools because I can use, what is it, base to tap and base to bin or whatever some of the DOS stuff is. So so I got kind of the basic one done so I can create an 8K cartridge that works with what was I saying? Greaseweazle. But what was it? I was looking at doing Wes B's 64 column basic thing because there may have been you or somebody else was saying that that doesn't work if you tried booting a cartridge, or can you use 64 column mode
From the
AROS
cartridge? Sure. Yeah. Stuart sold a 64 OS 64 for a number of years.
Well, right, because OS 64, but that was kind of oh no, that okay, let me think. Yeah, that's bootable. And then Wes's was actually from like a REM statement or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just a short machine code program.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I was gonna play around with just trying to use 64 column too in the cartridge. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of neat. So I'm just trying to document my thoughts before I forget what I'm doing. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and that's like, you know, the amount of progress that's been made in getting us to a point where you could say take a basic program and put it on a cartridge over the past 6 weeks between you and Jeff B and you know everybody else has been astounding. We went from almost nothing to you know being able to make a cartridge.
Yeah, and when Adam suggested printing out those documents, I did go and get the third-party guide and that technical manual printed, and that's great too because I was trying to read off my phone or tablet those 400-page guides or whatever, and just to have books that I can thumb through and like highlight and stuff. I'm like a book guy, so that's been kind of nice too. So I can read about these different things and kind of tab the sections where they talk about the AROS versus LROS and then the bank switching scheme and everything. So I've still got a lot to learn, but it's starting to kind of come together with all the tools and all the email traffic that's going through on all this stuff. Yep. I appreciate it.
Also, one of the things about the third-party guide that I kind of like to have handy is the cover of it says proprietary information, don't share it or what have you, which I think is just kind of cool that I've got that now and everyone else has it, but it's still cool to see it on the cover. Like, don't share this. No one can see this.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that stuff, Jeff Burrell helped me out a little bit with my ROM disassembly, and Tim Swenson gave me a little kick in the butt a few weeks back, and he emailed me and said, how close are we to having that available? And so in the past 2 or 3 weeks, I've been working through, you know, a bunch of those new resources like the third-party guide and incorporating that into the ROM disassembly. It's been really helpful because
the ROM disassembly is already available though, right? It's just not.
It is, but it's not done. There's whole passages where I've, you know, left notes to myself where it's like, finish this, comment that. And so I've been working my way through those things. And I ordered I just mocked up a simple print edition and ordered a proof copy from Amazon's print on demand service, just so that I can have like you guys said, a physical book where I can, you know, make notes on it, you know, because I'm like switching between screens and trying to, you know, remember stuff. But being able to, you know, flip back and forth between pages in a book is helpful.
They do have these things, Dave, you know, they're called printers.
This thing is 504 pages.
Well, I mean, you know, a ream
I
is
am
500
not
pages.
printing 504 pages off my little inkjet.
Oh, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, I'd get a laser for that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I was able to, you know, send it off to them and get a proof copy for like $6 or $7. And I was hoping it would be here earlier, but you know, we had this little weather event and it's kind of slowed up delivery of stuff. So they say this coming week I should have it. I'll post a picture or two. But to Tim Swenson's question, my goal is to have this thing done by the end of the year, and then
Which
you'll be
year?
able to, you know, go get your
Which
own
year?
Touche. By the end of 2022, I intend to have it available on Amazon, so you can, you know, get your print copy if you want, or the PDF, you know, will be available from my website, and you can get it there if you want to print it off your own printer.
Carl.
Hey man, I work for HP, so I've got an enterprise laser jet that'll print out
geez.
500 pages in maybe, you know, 5 minutes.
Yeah. Just bang that right out.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I'm going to echo what Adam said. Is there anybody else who wants to jump in and tell us what they've been up to, ask questions? Not all at once.
Well, if nobody's come forward, I do have some questions for David about some of those updates that you posted this morning or yesterday.
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead.
Today. Yeah. So I found this kind of interesting. You posted something called I haven't followed the link yet, but something called the Asimic assembler. That was a ROM replacement for the, what is it, Z81? ZX81?
Yeah. This is a
Tell me about
crazy
that.
little thing that you know, some company over in England made. It was a 4K ROM that plugged into your, again, like the Treeforth one, where it came with this crazy socket. You would, you know, stick it in and replace, and it was an assembly language development system apparently for the you know, for the 81, and it got mentioned by a columnist in Byte. And I'd have to.
Now, I assume it's a monitor and not an assembler, right? I mean, it can't.
It's an assembler. It's an assembler, and the manual is like 3/4 of an inch thick. It's no joke. It's real hardcore. I mean, it does all kinds of crazy stuff. I haven't even, you know, done much digging into the manual, but I guess they made some modifications for you know, the fact that for some difference between the 1000, but I can't imagine what it was other than the 60 hertz. So maybe the modifications have to do with the video signal generation, because it does talk about how you can do high res programming. And
so does it switch into ZX81 ROM when you want to try to run your assembly code?
I've not read the manual to that point yet, but my suspicion, my belief is that, you know, that this was a thing in which you could develop assembly language programs for your you know, 81 and generate a tape and then load it, you know, in basic mode. But like I said, I haven't dug that much much into it.
Sounds kind of rudimentary, because I know, like with Hot Z that I was using, you know, you could write your code on the machine and run it right away.
Yeah.
You didn't have to. Yeah, you didn't have to. I mean, it would be nice on that one, maybe if we could actually switch it, because the memory's still there, right? That's not changed. So I mean, you could write stuff into the memory, but then when you wanted to run it, it would actually switch to the ZX81 ROM so that you could actually run it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Because if you have a bug or something like that, right, you need to set your stops, right? So you you can run the code up to here and stop. Okay, that's good. And
yeah, set your breakpoints. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so
seems a shame to just have a totally dedicated ROM for an assembler, and you can't run your code that you're writing without saving it,
Well,
right?
Carl,
Like,
keep
like
in mind that you would be stepping up from like hand coding, you know, and like looking at a table, get the opcode, you know, from like that would be
well,
big
I
improvement.
get that, but
Yeah.
there was also Hot Z. I think that Kingsley also made it, and I know there's other ones that you actually ran on the hardware anyway. So, you know, I don't know why you would necessarily need to replace the ROM, but
Yeah.
it's
Well,
interesting. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what this, you know, the capabilities of it are, because there has to be some reason they did it that way. Right.
Well, one reason I can imagine is that the ZX81 was a pretty memory constrained computer. So if you put the assembler in the lower ROM, you could have all your 16K for assembly development.
Yeah.
Right. But like I
Yeah.
said, the RAM is separate, right? So I mean, yeah, we're just replacing the ROM. So unless
Yeah.
they maybe that thing decoded the address space a little bit more, so maybe this 4K ROM was in addition to the 8K ZX81 ROM down there. I don't know. You know.
Yeah, I've not delved into it. They did make, so they made an internal version where you know, replace the chip. And then they made an external board that plugged into the back that also had an 8255 for purposes, whatever you wanted to use it for, you know, to get some ports.
That's the only thing I can think of is, and I'm not trying to be argumentative or anything, is just, you know, maybe they decoded the address space more so you could actually use the lower 32K area individually, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because otherwise you get the mirror images of the ROM, right? I think from 8 to 16K is a mirror image because they didn't decode it.
Yep.
Right. So you couldn't stick a 4K ROM in that space and actually have it work. So maybe that little board you plug in actually decoded it and it was in addition to.
It's a direct replacement for the basic
Okay.
ROM. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to open up your case and put it in. But to your point, Carl, it says, you know, if you plan to use both this and basic, then you might want to invest in this board that they had, and that you could switch back and forth, like you said, between the two and retain what was in RAM.
Right.
In doing that switch.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
David, we're down to just under 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We need to, I guess, decide on our next meeting time, make sure we're having it that day. And if there's anything we need to cover on that meeting, and I don't know if we have anyone lined up, but I don't think we do.
We don't.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
Is there anyone here who would like us to try to find somebody that they would like to make? We're going to make them join the meeting. They would ask them to join the meeting.
So somebody posted a link to the manual for this other product, RPNZL, or yeah, RPNZL, and it had a person's name attached to it, and I've emailed that person. Lon Hildreth, who was on with us a few months ago, shared with me a PDF of some of his scans, one of which was this memo describing new hires at Timex and what they were going to do. And so I started working on trying to track some of those folks down as well. So I'm hoping to get, you know, some other folks to join us from Timex, one of whom I'm really hoping is a guy named Mike Brannigan, who was one of the authors of the technical manual for the 2068. And as it turns out, according to that memo, he was in charge of hardware. So, you know, maybe he can give us some, you know, insights into why the bus expansion unit wanted to use a 4-bit device for transferring information. Anyway, our next meeting will be December 5th. It's a Monday, as usual, at 9 p.m. Eastern. And then the one after that is in December is the 18th, which is 1 week before Christmas. So you know, if you want to send anything for Christmas, you got plenty of time. And that'll be it too. A little further out is January, and this is where it might be a good idea to think about what we want to do. The first Monday in January is the 2nd, which is fine by me. You know, y'all should all be over your hangovers by then. So you know, if you guys are okay with doing the, you know, January 2nd, I'm cool with January 2nd as well. Okay.
I know, like for me, you know, that's actually the observed New Year's Day, right, for companies. So I'm actually, you know, we're actually off that day.
Yeah. So it works out for a lot of folks, right? It gives you plenty of time to prepare during the day, you know, to get your projects all brought up to speed, you know, to have to show off. You'll have no excuses on the 2nd. And it's a new year, so you know, new year, new you.
David's going to be sending everyone his book on that day from the meeting. He's going to get all our addresses.
You know, so Adam, actually, you bring up an interesting point. And that is that there are probably folks here who are reasonably adjacent to each other. And maybe that's something we should talk about on our Monday meeting, is about whether, you know, we want to try to figure out a way to, you know, connect folks who are physically close, you know, make that possible, so that maybe we can get one more user group besides the Albuquerque.
We all can move here.
Going on.
It's warm here.
It's warm.
Yeah. Well, it's 50 degrees here, but we didn't get all the snow that you guys got up, you know, up there.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So, you know,
good idea, currently 50.
51.7 is what my weather station says here.
Oh boy.
I'm warmer here.
Well,
Albuquerque sounded good.
Tim, you're in a nice temperate area.
Not bad. Snow is something you drive to.
Well, thank you, everybody. Again, you know, it feels like it's been too short. Probably has. I'm glad everybody was able to join. I'm glad, you know, Mark, that you were able to join us, and Larry. It was cool hearing about the Westby from you. And I will see you guys in December. Enjoy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, everyone. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Dropping in.